Welcome to Module 7, or the part of the lecture intended for the urinary system. The flow of discussion will be from what organ the urine is being formed until to the tract where the urine will be released out from the body. A quick discussion on the microanatomy of the blood flow of the kidney will be presented to appreciate further the function and anatomy of the system. At the end of this module, you should be able to identify the organs and associated structures in each segment of the urinary system and trace the microanatomy of the renal blood vessels. The most important function of the urinary system is to maintain the constant internal environment termed as homeostasis. Likewise, the urinary system regulates the chemical composition and volume of the body fluids. This is termed as the osmoregulation. The system also removes nitrogenous waste products and excess water from the body through its excretion function. Additionally, the system through the kidneys can act as an endocrine gland by the secretion of the hormone erythropoietin, which is important for the production of red blood cells. The system lies in the abdominal and pelvic cavities. It is anatomically linked with the genital or the reproductive system and may be referred collectively as the urogenital system. The urinary system consists of paired kidneys, paired ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. Let us begin with the most important organ of the system, the kidneys. Kidneys are paired reddish-brown organs located at the dorsal part of the abdominal cavity. The appropriate description of the location of the kidney is retroperitoneal. In dogs, the right kidney is always higher than the left. In fact, the cranial pole of the right kidney lies in a complementary fossa of the liver, the renal impression found on the caudate process and the right hepatic lobe. In this slide, you can see that the kidney has different borders and extremity. The medial border is the side of the kidney where we can see the renal hilus. At the opposite side is the lateral border. The cranial extremity is also termed as the cranial pole, while the caudal extremity is termed as the caudal pole. Note that the two kidneys in this slide have different colors. That is because of the fibrous capsule. The fibrous capsule covers the kidneys that are loosely attached except at the hilus. In the case of the right kidney, the fibrous capsule was removed. The left has still the fibrous capsule, thus still have the whitish appearance. Here is another slide showing the gross appearance of the kidney in situ, meaning in place. The perirenal fats are mass of protective fat surrounding the kidney and holding it in its place. You will see in the actual specimen that fats are surrounding the kidney. In order to visualize the internal structures of the kidney, here is a sagittal section of the organ. The renal cortex is the outer layer of the kidney parenchyma beneath the capsule. It is characterized by their light color and granular appearance as shown here. The renal medulla is the inner layer of the kidney parenchyma characterized by the striated appearance. Here is the renal hilus where various important structures like renal artery, renal vein, and the ureter are passing through. The renal pelvis is the expanded proximal end of the ureter. This is the one collecting the formed urine from the kidneys to the ureter. However, the dog kidneys have some modifications during their embryonic development. In order for us to understand those modifications, let us discuss the internal anatomy of the kidneys in general. In our case, here is the anatomy of the kidney of a pig showing most of the structures. The kidneys are actually lobulated, meaning they are composed of lobules. Each renal lobule has a renal papilla. This is the apex of a kidney lobule that drips urine into the proximal end of the ureter. This structure is absent in dogs. Instead, they have the renal crest, which is a ridge resulting from the complete fusion of the medullary pyramids. Renal calyx is a cup-shaped structure receiving the urine from the renal papilla, while the renal sinus is the space occupied by the ureter, renal blood vessels, and the nerve entering the kidney at the hilus. Now let us discuss the blood vessels entering the kidney and its branches inside the kidney. Blood entering the kidney is coming from the renal artery. Here is the renal artery. This artery is one of the paired branches of the abdominal aorta. We will discuss further the blood vessels arising from the aorta when we reach the module on the circulatory system. Our focus on this part is the renal artery. The renal artery will branch off into interlobar artery, as you can see here. Imagine that this blood vessel is in between the lobes of the kidneys. Further, this interlobar artery will become the arcuate artery. The name arcuate was derived from its appearance that it forms an arc between the lobes. Then, this arcuate artery will give rise to a smaller interlobular artery. After the interlobular artery, it will become the afferent arteriole. This afferent arteriole will give rise to the glomerulus for the filtration of the blood to become a glomerular filtrate, the start of urine production. The filtered blood will then enter the efferent arteriole and will exit via the venous system. The veins are named with the same name in parallel with the arteries. From the interlobular vein to arcuate vein to interlobar vein, and finally, it will exit the kidney via the renal vein. The nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. This is the site where the urine is formed after the blood is filtered. We cannot see the actual nephron grossly and can be appreciated more in histology courses under the aid of a microscope, and the process of urine formation will be discussed in detail in your physiology class. However, it is important at least to discuss the parts of a nephron in this course. We already mentioned the glomerulus in the previous slide. Blood coming from the afferent arteriole will be filtered by the glomerulus. This is actually a tuft of capillaries inside the capsule called Bowman's capsule. After the glomerulus, the glomerular filtrate will enter the proximal convoluted tubule. This is a coiled tubule as shown here. Then, it is continuous with the loop of Henle with a thick and thin limbs. The loop of Henle is continuous with the distal convoluted tubule. This is the same in structure with the proximal convoluted tubule. And finally, the last segment is the collecting duct where the formed urine will exit the kidney to the ureter via the renal calyces. The formed urine in the kidney will leave the organ and will enter the ureter. Ureter is a paired fibromuscular tube carrying urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder. Each ureter passes through the urinary bladder's wall at an acute angle as shown here, preventing backflow and still allowing the urine to empty into a full bladder by peristaltic action. Next is the urinary bladder. The bladder is a hollow piriform muscular sac lying on the pelvic floor, but according to its distension, it can extend to the ventral abdominal wall. It is described as having a body, which is the main part of the bladder, having a dorsal and a ventral surface. It has a neck, which is the constricted portion of the urinary bladder, which is continuous posteriorly with the urethra. The fundus is the blunt flask-shaped anterior extremity of the urinary bladder. You can also have the detrusor muscle. These are the unique smooth muscles of the urinary bladder. The detrusor muscle remains relaxed to allow the bladder to store urine and contracts during urination to release the urine. The urethral ostium is the paired openings for the ureters, while the trigone is a triangular area in the vicinity of the neck. This is the part of the urinary bladder that is sensitive to pressure. The urethra starts at the neck of the bladder and terminates at the exterior. There are differences between the urethra of a male and a female animal. The male urethra is longer and is common to both the urinary and the genital system. It is divided into two parts. The pelvic part is from the urinary bladder to the ischial arc, while the penile urethra is from the ischial arc to the glans penis. The female urethra, on the other hand, is short and dilatable. It runs on the floor of the pelvis and opens on the floor of the vagina. And that ends our discussion on the urinary system. As a recap, The urine is formed at the kidneys, and the other parts of the system is for the transport and storage of the urine. A short quiz is prepared for this topic so you can assess your learning about the anatomy of the urinary system.